I don't know, other than I'd like to find out where some of these come from. You know, some of these rats around here, so we'll figure that out.
Is that a rat sound or is that a chipmunk? What's up, everybody? Welcome to Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Rat 1, Rat 2, right here. Mike Vrabel and the Patriots lose 42-10 in their preseason finale. Starters didn't play. People of consequence didn't play. Mike Vrabel also had this to say when asked about the Patriots and what will happen and unfold over the next few days with their roster.
Well, again, we're going to continually try to, strengthen the roster every way we can. There's a couple options, right? You can, try to trade for players. You could try to claim some players next week. So, again, we're always going to be trying to strengthen the roster, and that's what we'll try to do here over the course of the next 10 days.
We're not going to delve too deeply into the game. You guys don't expect that. What we will delve deeply into is the roster. And when Mike is asked about where do you see this team now, as opposed to when you took it over at the beginning of camp, and he says we're going to try and improve the roster in every way we can, it announces to me, and every coach is going to say that to an extent, but him to go to that leads me to believe that, hey, we got a lot of friggin' work to do, not just in learning, but in making the team better. And I wonder if, to an extent, 42-10 when it's nothing but your backups out there sends a message that some of these guys are trying real hard but not ready.
It's just not good enough. But yeah, I do wonder if in the back of his mind he's thinking about, okay, how many guys are we going to be able to really claim off waivers? How realistic is that? How many guys are we going to be able to trade for? Because, they may like their starters, and I think they do in a number of different spots. And the reality is you're not really able to acquire many starting level players at this point in the year unless you're really willing to give up something significant in terms of draft capital. But they need better depth. They need better depth at linebacker. They need better depth at the offensive line. They need better depth, in my opinion, on the edge.
Receiver.
Receiver for sure. A couple of those guys are hurt.
Really tight end too, if it's going to be a critical position.
Yes, they have two guys. If one of those guys goes down, that's a significant percentage of what I think Josh McDaniels is going to want to call this year with two tight ends on the field at one time. Jack Westover, to me, I don't know if he's an NFL roster player. So depth is an issue. And so there might be a bunch of guys who end up on this 53-man roster, Tom, that are not even currently on the 90-man roster.
And that's what's one of the interesting aspects of this team as we talk about the improvement expected. We spoke about it on Quick Slants and Expectations. We had Will Fork on earlier this week and Julian Edelman both talking about the improvement. And it's constant, and expected. They changed the head coach to a guy who's experienced as a former coach of the year, had his team in the AFC Championship. They brought in one of the most decorated offensive coordinators in the history of the sport. They have the third overall pick who has all the tools and should improve. They did things on the offensive line. They tried to and spent on the defensive line. They should be a better football team. But the fact of the matter is they were 29, 30, 31, or 32 in terms of the best teams in football, and you can't fix problems that are built over a decade, most profoundly even over the last 5 years, including the smoking gun of the 2024 draft, where you may wind up by the end of next week, with just one player from that draft. So to me, that is kind of the story before we get into the game and some of the things we saw, is the Patriots right now, coming out of their third preseason game, building towards the opener, they've improved, but they are still wafer thin in some spots.
They are. And, that you bring up that 2024 draft, and it really is unbelievable that you can't even get interior offensive linemen. Like they could still use a guard. They could use a center. These are positions you should be able to find in the middle rounds, even in the later rounds of some drafts, Tom, somewhere along the line. And they don't have it. They don't have enough, in my opinion. And they've spent picks on these spots. And it's really, I think, difficult to do what it looks like they're about to do, which is waste an entire draft outside of the third pick, which didn't require, in my opinion, a whole lot of thought.
So the reason I lead with that is the Patriots are heading toward a pivotal time in their season where they say, okay, these guys were with us. Some of these guys we want out of here. Some of these guys can be replaced by people who haven't even been with us. That's what the Patriots are building to next. The checkpoint coming up as they make the cutdowns on Tuesday. But get to this game, and some of the guys who were out there included Kyle Duggar, a second-round pick in 2020, who has played good football for the Patriots football team, still coming back from an ankle injury, still trying to master the Patriots defense. Out there late, had a number of really good hits in run support, ended up with a pick on a ridiculously dumb throw by Jameis. But here was Kyle Duggar at his locker after the game talking about his situation.
I got a lot of work to do, a lot of room for improvement, and so that's what I'm focused on.
I know this is a big week for a lot of guys. Is there any sort of anxiety on your part about your future with this?
Nah. Things are going to go how they're going to go. I'm trusting God in it, and I'm going to keep, taking opportunities I have to continue to get better. Like I said, get back to playing fast.
Has there been a dialogue back and forth with you and the coaches about why you've been playing so deep into preseason games?
Nah, there hasn't been.
Kyle Duggar has a $9 million salary, a $15 million cap hit. If the Patriots release him, they'll carry about $14 million in dead money as a result of his 4-year, $58 million contract. A lot of that money is going to accelerate. Bottom line is, if you're ever going to cut a guy and swallow dead money when you have $60 million of cap space, that's the time to do it. Is he going to be released, traded with the Patriots taking back some money, or traded and somebody's going to say, we'll take that guy in his $9 million deal?
I like that middle option. I think that should be within the realm of possibility for the Patriots, is to say to a team that could use a box safety or even a box safety turning into a weak side linebacker, because Lord knows he's linebacker size in 2025, and say, hey, we would be willing to eat a good percentage of this money that is headed his way if you'll send us back a little bit better pick, right? So could you end up with a 5th-round pick by eating a few $1 million and sending Kyle Duggar somewhere? I think that should be in the cards.
Anthony Jennings didn't play at all tonight. He's been playing all into the second quarter, into the second half of preseason games. He was terrific last week against Minnesota with 3 sacks. Him not playing at all after playing as long as he did last week. And really, to me, his quality still as a football player, not just in 2024 and this preseason, but over the course of his time here as an edge guy who can set the edge and being a run stopper, indicates to me he would probably be the first player that the Patriots are able to move because of his affordability to other teams and because of the fact that he's got his best football ahead of him, I think, if he gets in the right spot.
And he's a guy that plays a premium position, even if he is not possessing the premium skill that's usually associated with that premium position. He is not an elite level pass rusher. We know that. If he was, they wouldn't even be considering moving on from him. But the fact, Tom, that he could play as a base end, I think, in a lot of different defensive schemes on early downs, and then you can get your sub rushers in there, and you could get him off the field if you really want to. I don't think you necessarily have to. I think he does have some pass rush ability too. It's just very clear that the Patriots don't see him as that kind of twitchy, edge rushing, edge defender that Harold Landry is, that Keion White is, who's been a great fit since he joined this offseason. So to me, you should be able to get some value back there too. We just talked about this on the postgame show with Michael Hawley. I think they're so wafer thin across the board that I would be reluctant to part with guys that I think are real NFL players. Now, if you're telling me there's a 4th-round pick out there for Anthony Jennings, go ahead and do it. I would do that, sure. But if it's a 7th, or you're sending away a 7th to get back a 6th, and Anthony Jennings is out the door on top of it, I don't really understand that. I feel like you should be able to find a role for a guy like that in your defense, no matter what your scheme is.
2 other guys I want to talk about, Keion White and Javon Baker. First, Keion White playing into the second quarter tonight. Keion picked up as a free agent. He's on a 1-year deal, was with the Raiders most recently. Has had a good camp, and it seems like he has jumped ahead of Keion White on the depth chart. Is Keion White in quote-unquote trouble? I would say no. And then Javon Baker in his situation.
I don't think Keion White's in trouble, but I know that he's been surpassed on the depth chart. I mean, this has been happening. He played into the second quarter in the Minnesota Vikings preseason game, and it was pretty apparent even then that Keion had surpassed Keion White. And so I look at Chason as an excellent fit for this scheme, a guy who appears to be ascending. Even though he's been in the league longer than Keion White, he's actually a few days younger than Keion White. And Keion White, to me, Tom, I'm not sure how he has improved since he entered the league. He just feels still like a player who doesn't have a whole lot in the way of pass rush moves. When I watch him rush the passer, he's just trying to go right down the middle of whoever happens to be blocking him. And sometimes it works, but most times it doesn't. And for a guy who is that physically talented, working with a new staff that clearly needs to and wants to get as much out of him as they can, I'm surprised I haven't seen more from him this summer. So I'm not surprised that he played as much as he did today. I'm not surprised that Chason has passed him. I would be surprised if he was about to be out the door. I don't think that's going to happen.
What's interesting about him is in 2024, he started the season really well. He was pretty dynamic, and he caught people's eyes because he was making plays. But a lot of the plays that he was making were a little bit of freelance, it seemed. Devon Godshaw had pointed comments about people playing selfishly. And if you read between the lines, it felt like it might have been directed at Keion White because oftentimes he was coming down and leaving the edge. And they were getting absolutely cooked once the team, well, it didn't take long, but weeks 2, 3, 4, and then so on, was when Keion White and the defense specifically was starting to get exploited on his edge. I wonder if that was part of the reason why he would make those kinds of plays. Look, I'm not really good at going upfield and doing a bunch of, swim moves, spins, hand fighting, and discards. So I know that these guys are going to get confused if I run inside here and I can come up with a play. So that you have to do it by the book. Like people, like in basketball, you got to run the offense a little bit. Yes, fine, you can get to the hoop. That's great. But we can't do that all the time because it's cuckoo. It's not going to help everybody.
And I just can't imagine that Mike Vrabel's the kind of guy who's going to be okay with freelancing to that level. Even if he wants those edge rushers that get up the field and are fast and athletic, and maybe they do because they are those types of players and they have that type of physical skill set. Maybe he's willing to accept that, okay, every once in a while that's going to leave some space and we just got to make sure we have that covered. But if it's happening on a consistent basis or you're doing it in your own way, the way it seemed like Keion White was last year, I can't imagine that Mike Vrabel is going to be okay with you being on the field all that often.
Yeah. I should use basketball defense more specifically, especially if you're playing a zone. One guy decides he's going to go try and jump something. He's going to start attacking somebody out top.
Right.
Now all of a sudden everybody has to move.
Like an uncontrolled contest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't run out there and start trying to steal that ball from that guy because it leaves me hanging out here against people I can't play
a
with.
couple passes away from a layup.
Yeah, can't have it. Everybody has to rotate. What do you do? Javon Baker, Phil, didn't really do anything to make the team, but I still look at the depth chart there and see Kyle Williams with a bad coconut perhaps after last week's hit, Kendrick Bourne in disrepair, and Jalen Polk. That was actually the sound that we let in with Mike Vrabel was asked about Jalen Polk in a report that he was headed to IR and had shoulder surgery, and Mike then said, who the hell said that, in essence. But the wide receiver room, which really can't spare anybody, is in a little bit of a depth issue. So what's Javon Baker's disposition?
Yeah, and again, we don't know the status or the prognosis for Williams or Chisholm.
Oh, Chisholm, I
because
didn't even mention
both
him.
of those
I mentioned all
guys,
the other guys.
both of those guys would be ahead of Baker. To me, you're right. Baker did nothing to make the team tonight in terms of his offensive performance. Had a drop, had another ball hit his hands, was thrown behind, but then later had an offensive pass interference. That game in Minnesota, to me, was pretty ugly from an offensive standpoint for him. I do wonder, Tom, though, if these plays that I see him make on special teams, and tonight it was taking your blocker and driving him down the field and driving him into his own teammate and helping force a fumble that the Patriots were able to recover, and they ended up with great field position. Saw him as the first guy down the field on another couple of different occasions. Do they look at that and say, well, you're not playing offense for us anytime soon, bud, but we'd love to have you as a gunner? Marcellus Dial is out for the year with an ACL injury. There haven't been many others who have stood out to me in that regard. And so you combine tonight's game with what he did in that first preseason game against the Commanders where he made a couple special teams tackles. I wonder if he's just going to be a core special teams guy for them. I could see him potentially making the roster via that path.
We have a load of time before the Patriots open their season with the Raiders, but let's get ahead of the curve just a little bit, and just now that the preseason, mini camp, OTAs, training camp, it's all in the books. If you asked me, and you didn't, but if you did,
I might.
and said, hey, what are the positions that really needed to improve once the season ended last year? I would have said pass rush, offensive line, wide receiver, and sneaky tight end, and defensive line too. You know, they just the defensive they
Did
would
that fall under the pass rush category?
yeah,
You're
no,
saying
they weren't
even against the run.
You said they weren't good against the run, and I agree with that when you really look at it. So, which ones did they improve the most? Kind of give me a pecking order there. There's 5 there. Let's take. You can do it. You can do 5.
Well, I think the one that honestly might have been improved the most is the offensive line,
And still not good.
and it's still not great. But I believe you have 2 competent offensive tackles now, which you were lacking last year. Micah Wenu was really kind of the one player you could depend on at least being out there every single week last year. He has looked fine to me this camp. He really has not looked like a problem at all. Center I worry about, and I worried about it last year after David Andrews got injured. And left guard, I think, is still a concern because even though you might have a long-term answer there in Jared Wilson, and he had an excellent early part of camp, he trailed off a little bit. I know, the reason he was given some time off was not solely, and when I say time off, I mean the reason why he sort of ceded the top left guard spot to Ben Brown in Minnesota for a time was partly injury-related, but it was partly performance-related too. And he was just seeing things a little too quickly. Not that he was diagnosing them quickly, but they were happening a little too quickly for him. And so I look at that and I say, boy, is he really ready to be your week 1 starter there? And I'm not sure he is. And I'm not sure Ben Brown is a great option there either. So I do think that's the most improved of those spots. And then after that, I might say pass rush. Just adding Landry and adding Milton Williams in particular, and Chason, who to me has been a real surprise.
And Kairos Tonga.
I like him a lot. And
Me
he
too.
does have some pass rush chops. I think he's going to be used mostly on early downs, but he's a powerful human.
And a healthy Barmore, too.
And a healthy Barmore. Exactly.
So, could be pass rush. Maybe it's pass rush.
It
Maybe
might
it's
be.
offensive line. Wide receiver, here's another place where they have not really improved to good, but consider what they were. I just as you were talking to, I'm thinking, you're not going to have a Chooks Okorafor situation this year where your left tackle plays 12 snaps and says, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. That's what happened. Meanwhile, wide receiver, the most experienced wide receiver coming out of camp last year was the number 3 receiver for the Vikings, who I'm wrestling with and trying to place the name of. Begins with an L.
Nope. KJ.
KJ Osborne, my God.
Yeah.
So we would sit here and say, maybe KJ Osborne. He couldn't play. He was not fast enough. So last year was KJ Osborne, Demario Douglas, Keyshawn Booty, because Bourne wasn't ready to go.
Well, Jalen Polk was, as a second-round
Jalen
pick,
Polk.
was expected to do
My
a
God.
lot.
This year, you haven't really done anything drastic. You added Steph Diggs, but we haven't seen enough from Steph Diggs in the last 3 or 4 weeks to say, holy crap, you can put that. That's money in the bank. Demario Douglas is going to be a better player than he was last year. Booty has improved.
He has.
But I can't really see drastic improvement at the wide receiver position.
And I like Kyle Williams, too. It's just, now he's out of the lineup, and, it's too bad
hard
for
to
him
buy
that he
in
got
on
hurt.
a third-round pick.
It is, especially at that position, especially given this team's history at that position. The disappointing thing for Williams and the timing of his injury is that I thought I saw flashes from him of what Kyle Williams could be if he reaches his peak in Minnesota, which is uncovering deep down the field, shaking free of people at the line of scrimmage on slants. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be I don't think he's ever going to be Julian Edelman type of route runner or, that kind of shifty, which you might expect because he's sort of an undersized guy. I just don't think that's his game. But he knows how to get off the line, and he can run. And he did it in Minnesota, and he was open. And he just missed on a couple different connections with Drake May deep down the field. And it felt like, okay, maybe now he's starting to build towards something. And then he ends up getting injured in that game, and now you don't really know what you're going to get from him. Stephon Diggs, the one thing I will say, because I feel like I've been trying to keep the expectations reasonable for him. because I think they've gotten a little out of whack for some people who just see the name and they see that he's back and he's healthy and, well, why can't he be a Pro Bowl type receiver?
I would fall into that category when I saw him move around, but we haven't seen enough, but he hasn't improved since we saw him running around in minicamp.
So the one thing I would say is, and just to be fair about it, I think the last practice we saw at Gillette Stadium this week, which was very competitive, a lot of 11-on-11 starters for starters, that was the most involved I've seen him really all training camp. And it wasn't like he was dominating, but he had 4 targets total, 3 from Drake May, 1 from Josh Dobbs, and he caught 3 of them. And the one from Dobbs was actually somewhat down the field, and they targeted him deep down the field, like 35, maybe 40 yards down the field for the first time in camp. Hadn't been used at all in that fashion this summer. And so I look at that, again, not an incredibly dominant performance, but in that one practice, he had as many targets and catches from Drake May as he did in 2 practices against the Minnesota Vikings when Drake May dropped back to pass almost 50 times.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at that and say, is he ramping up? Is he, we're a couple weeks away from the regular season. He's coming off this injury. Is he slowly going to be more and more involved in this offense in these practices until we get to week 1, and then all of a sudden he's getting 10 targets? I don't know, but I just want to share that with the people that are listening because they've heard me say nothing. But I don't know. This guy barely gets used in 11-on-11. He doesn't look like anything close to a 1 to me, and maybe not even a 2. But he was better in that last practice we saw here in Foxborough.
So we talked about offensive line, better, still not good. Pass rush, better, could be sniffing around good. Just talked about a position that is escaping
Receiver.
me. Yeah, that's good job, Tom.
Yep.
Not you.
It's late.
It is late, folks. Wide receiver, I don't think it has the potential to be drastically better, but got to show me. Then we wanted to talk about tight end. It's a huge position, but you're putting so much on Hunter Henry, and that the tight end routes in the Josh McDaniels offense are so friggin' dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And same with Austin Hooper. They haven't done enough at that spot. It's going to be something that during this season you're going to, oh, shit, Hunter got hurt. Not wishing it on you, bud. But it happens at that spot.
No, the opposite. No, yeah.
So tight end's not deep enough. It's good, but not deep enough. So I'm going to put that in number 4 in terms of whatever the hell I'm stacking here.
Can I ask you a quick
Yeah,
question
go
about
ahead,
this
yeah.
one? Would you ever let Mac Hollins run those tight end
Yeah.
routes?
Oh, shit. I didn't mention Mac Hollins one
Yeah, we
time in the
should've,
wide
'cause
receiver room.
and I should have mentioned him too because he's been better than I thought he would.
What a
be.
dink.
Well, that's both of us.
Inside of my ass.
Couple of dinks right here.
Much better. Wide receivers are better. Mac Hollins, unless Mac Hollins is an apparition, a mirage, then they're better. Sorry, Mac. Should we start the pod again?
He's shoeless Joe Jackson in Field of Dreams.
Coming out of the cornfield. Should we start the pod again because I screwed that up?
Yeah, let's restart it. It's only 12:25.
All right.
Come on.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We're going to talk about the improvement at the wide receiver position, beginning with Mac Hollins. Phil, additionally, so we look at all these different things, and the Patriots are now getting ready for the Raiders. How busy will the next 5 days be for this team? How surprised will fans be? Do they need to keep refreshing their phones if they want to keep abreast of what the Patriots are up to? Or is it going to be kind of quiet? 1 to 10.
I think they're going to be busy.
An
I think
8?
this is going to be an 8. I think you're going to see a couple of high-profile trades of players out, and I could see potentially, who knows? I mean, got some big-name guys out there, Tom, that are still looking for
There
contracts.
could be a big-ticket item?
I've been saying I would do all the big-ticket items. I mean, you obviously can't do them all, but, like, sure, be interested in them. Make those calls. Have those conversations. You've got $60 million in cap space. You got a team that hasn't been good since 2019.
Sign them all.
What are you waiting for?
Sign them all and let
What are you
God
waiting
sort it
for?
out.
Like, let's get a product on the field here in New England.
All right. You know what, folks? That was a 42-10 loss for the Patriots tonight. We just gave you a product, a post-game product. Did we talk about Duggar and use that sound?
I can't remember anything beyond 30 seconds ago.
It was a long one tonight. If we didn't,
We talked Duggar, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't we?
Texting Casey Keene. Did we talk Duggar? All right, Casey has some cleanup on aisle 5 because we did talk Duggar. All right, strap in. It's going to be a busy 5 or so days, and then the Patriots are going to get started getting ready for the Oakland Raiders. He's done it again. Vegas. Have a great weekend.